You ever walk into a place that's supposed to feel like home and instantly feel like you don't belong? That's exactly how it was when I stepped back into my parents' house at 38 weeks pregnant. Swollen ankles, aching back, and a belly that felt like a bowling ball strapped to my front. My husband Jonas had been called out of state on an urgent engineering project, and my parents, bless them, insisted I stay with them just for a few days. So you're not alone, sweetie. I should have known better. They didn't say it out loud, of course. But the second I walked through that front door, it was clear I wasn't the priority here. Delilah was, my younger sister, the ethereal soul, as Mum called her. She'd just landed some influencer contract with a vegan beauty brand, and suddenly the entire house revolved around her like she was the damn sun. Camille, can you take your shoes off more quietly? Delilah's meditating upstairs. I was barely through the hallway when I got that. Then came the house rules. No music in shared spaces, no TV after 8 p.m, no food with strong smells, no emotional conversations that could affect Delilah's energetic field. And I'm not making that up. My mum actually said that, with a straight face. I bit my tongue. This wasn't the time to stir drama. I just needed to make it through the week until Jonas got back. My daughter would be here any day, and I kept telling myself, this isn't about me, it's temporary. Just breathe. But the truth is, I'd been trained my whole life to downplay my needs whenever Delilah's feelings were in the room. And at 32 years old, with a baby kicking under my ribs and my entire body screaming for rest, I was still being told, in subtle and not so subtle ways, that I didn't matter as much. One night, I was washing baby clothes in the laundry room when I overheard Mom and Delilah talking in the next room. They didn't know I was there. Mum, I know it's stressful, sweetheart, but think of how proud everyone will be when your face is on that Sunset Bluffdy billboard. Delilah, I just need total stillness right now. Camille being here, it's a lot. Her energy is chaotic. Her energy. I stood there holding a damp onesie, biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Chaotic? I was 7 pounds away from giving birth. I couldn't even roll over without help, but somehow I was the disruptive one. I went back to the guest room, my old childhood room that had been stripped of any memory I left behind. No photos of me, no trophies, no trace I ever grew up there. But down the hall, Delilah's room looked like a shrine. Fairy lights, portraits, candles, affirmation boards, stacks of PR packages from brands that adored her. At dinner, I brought up the idea of moving to the downstairs room. It was cooler, easier on my back. Dad barely looked up from his soup. Delilah uses that space for breathwork. It's not available. Not available. I was too tired to argue. My back throbbed. My stomach felt tight. I was exhausted in every way a human can be. And still, I was supposed to shrink myself because my sister might be anxious before a photo shoot. That night, I journaled something I hadn't dared to admit out loud. They don't see me. I'm not a daughter to them. I'm just someone they tolerate because I come from them. And you know the messed up part? I didn't even blame them. I blamed myself for being the one who never made waves, who stayed quiet, who cleaned up behind the spotlight. But that night something small shifted. I couldn't name it yet, but it felt like the beginning of a revenge story I hadn't realized I'd been building my entire life. The next morning I woke up early and sat outside on the porch with a glass of water balanced on my belly. The sun was still low. It was the only time I could breathe before the house filled with whispers and requests for quiet energy. I rubbed my belly and whispered to my unborn daughter, I'll never make you feel like second place. Not to anyone. And I meant it. I didn't know that just a few days later, I'd be left on the side of a highway. I didn't know that my name would be used to fund something I never agreed to. I didn't know that the family who raised me would become the strangers I'd take to court. But right then, I just knew something had to change. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I was ready to stop shrinking. The contraction started while I was folding baby socks. I was in the guest room, my old bedroom turned into storage space, trying to stay quiet because Delilah was doing her guided breathwork upstairs. 1 second I was sorting onesies by colour, and the next I was doubled over, gripping the edge of the dresser, a bolt of pain cutting through my spine like lightning. At first, I thought maybe it was a false alarm, but 7 minutes later, it came again, stronger, sharper. I called out, "Mom?" She appeared in the doorway like I'd just interrupted a spa treatment. "Are you sure it's real?" she asked, one brow lifted like I was exaggerating for attention. "Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. Delilah's meditating." I couldn't even speak. I just nodded, clenched my teeth, and texted my OB. How far apart should I go to the hospital? Her reply came fast. Track them. If they get under 5 minutes, go in. Within an hour, they were 4 minutes apart. I took a deep breath, walked out to the kitchen, still trying to be respectful, and said, "Dad, I think it's time. Can you drive me to the hospital?" He was sipping coffee, reading some local business journal, didn't even look up. "Now?" he said, like I was asking him to cancel golf plans. "I'm having contractions," I said, clutching the kitchen counter for balance. He exhaled hard. "Delilah's about to start her vocal warm-ups. You know how important her launch is." I looked at him. Just looked. And for a second, I wondered if I was invisible. "You're kidding me," I muttered. "Camille, everything with you is always intense," he said. "You've got to learn to relax." Let me pause right here and ask you something. If someone you loved, your daughter, your friend, your sister, told you she was in labour, would you question it? Would you tell her she's being too much? Because that's exactly what happened to me. Let me know in the comments, honestly. What would you have done if you were me in that kitchen? Would you have screamed, left, called someone else? I want to hear from you. Back to the story. I didn't scream. I didn't yell. I packed my hospital bag, grabbed my phone, and waited by the front door like a dog left at the vet. After 20 minutes, they finally got in the car. Mum with her oversized sunglasses, Dad annoyed like I'd just ruined his Saturday. Delilah didn't come. She said hospitals made her feel energetically drained. We made it about 10 minutes down the highway before the next contraction hit. This one brought me to tears. I let out a sound, half gasp, half cry, and grabbed the handle above the car window. I heard Dad mutter under his breath, "She's going to scream the whole way." And Mum, rubbing her temples, added, "She's stressing me out." Then, before I knew what was happening, we slowed down. He pulled over. Right off the shoulder of a deserted stretch of road, cars zipped by, the sun was glaring, and the air was thick with heat and disbelief. I thought maybe they needed to switch drivers or breathe. But Mom turned to me, pushing her sunglasses down just far enough to lock eyes. "Delilah needs peace and silence today," she said flatly. "We'll call you a cab." I blinked at her. I honestly thought it was a joke. "I'm in labour." "You'll be fine," she waved off. "Women have babies in Ubers all the time." "You're seriously... We can't do this right now," she cut in. "Not with Delilah's mental state." And just like that, they left me. They drove off. I stood there on the shoulder of a freeway, one hand on my belly, the other shielding my eyes from the sun. My entire world narrowed to the sound of my own breath and the fading hum of their car disappearing down the road. I didn't cry. Not yet. I was too stunned to even feel. That numb kind of shock that sets in when you realize they chose her over me again. Even now. I called an Uber with hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. A woman named Maggie picked up. Her profile picture showed a bright smile and a cross necklace. When she pulled up and saw me leaning on the guardrail, she didn't hesitate for a second. She got out, helped me in, turned the AC all the way up and said, "Sweetheart, you just tell me when to speed." She held my hand at every red light. She said nothing unless I spoke. And 25 minutes later, I was in triage, screaming as a nurse with trembling hands caught my daughter in the world's loneliest delivery room. No husband, no parents, no sister, just me, a stranger, and my baby girl. And I looked at her with her eyes scrunched shut and tiny fists curled tight, and I whispered, "Arden, you will never, ever feel like I did today. I swear it to you." I didn't realize how much I'd been holding in until the delivery room fell silent. After Arden was born, I held her for the first time and cried, not because of the pain, not even from joy. I cried because in that moment I was finally free of needing their approval, of shrinking myself to fit into a family photo I'd never been invited to stand in properly. Jonas flew home that night. He missed the birth by hours, but when he walked into the hospital room, his face dropped. He kissed my forehead, touched Arden's tiny hand, and asked me what happened. I told him everything, the contractions, the silence, the highway. He listened without blinking, then said only 6 words. "They left you in labour." He didn't yell, he didn't curse, but something behind his eyes went dark, and I knew he was never going to see my parents the same way again. We brought Arden home 2 days later. And for a while I tried to keep the peace. I didn't return their texts. I ignored the 2-line message from my mum that read, "Glad everything went okay. Delilah says congrats." I stared at that like it was written in another language. That was it? No apology, no shame? I wasn't surprised, just tired. 2 weeks passed. My world was night feedings, sore ribs, diapers, trying to figure out how to swaddle with one hand while holding a bottle in the other. Jonas helped where he could, but I was still healing, in my body and in places no one could see. And then, on a Tuesday morning, I got a letter from the bank. It looked like a standard update at first. I almost tossed it, but something about it felt off. I opened it. "Dear Ms. Camille Rowan, this is to notify you of a recent soft credit inquiry initiated by First Point Mortgage regarding a property loan in your name." My stomach dropped. I hadn't applied for a loan. I logged into my credit portal, and there it was, big, bold, and very real. $218,000 mortgage loan, approved, closed. I blinked. Refreshed the page, checked the address, somewhere in the next county, a house I'd never seen. My name, my social security number, my credit profile. I called the bank immediately. "Hi, yes, this is Camille Rowan. I think there's been a mistake." The woman on the other end was kind but firm. "No mistake, ma'am. You were listed as primary borrower. It's already closed. Funds were issued last month." "Last month I was on bed rest," I said. "In the hospital. I didn't sign anything." There was a pause, then. "Would you like us to email over the application?" "Yes, please." The file came 10 minutes later. I opened it. And I swear my heart cracked right down the centre. My name, my forged signature, my stolen identity, but the real punch? The co-signers, Richard and Eileen Rowan, my parents, and listed as occupant and owner, Delilah Rowan. The house was bought for her, in my name. I couldn't move. I just sat there staring at the screen while Arden slept in her bassinet a few feet away. They didn't just abandon me. They didn't just dismiss me. They used me. They built something for her using my name. While I was in a hospital bed, bleeding and alone, it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. It was legal. It was criminal. And worst of all, it was intentional. They thought I wouldn't find out, that I'd just be too tired, too busy being a new mum to check. They thought I was still that quiet girl who never made waves. But they forgot something. I was a mother now. And there's nothing more dangerous than a woman who's finally realized her worth and has someone else to protect. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I opened a new document on my laptop and typed, "Identity Theft Report, Camille Rowan." Then I looked over at Arden and whispered, "You were born from pain, but you'll grow up watching your mother turn that pain into power." That night, when Jonas came home, I showed him everything. He didn't say a word. He just opened his phone, called his old roommate, now a litigation attorney, and said, "Hey man, you still handle civil fraud cases? Because my wife's about to burn the whole damn house down." I didn't scream. I didn't run to their house demanding answers. I didn't even reply to the text my mom sent the next day. "Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be, Camille. We'll talk when you calm down." Calm down? They used my name to buy a house. They co-signed a mortgage for my sister, while I was in a hospital gown, alone, hemorrhaging. And now they wanted me to breathe it away like some hormonal outburst. No, I was done shrinking. So I did the thing they never expected. I got quiet, but I didn't stop moving. Stop. The first thing I did was call Jonas's old college roommate Tarek, now a litigator in civil fraud and identity theft. I told him everything, from the forged documents to the date I was hospitalized. His voice was calm, professional, but under it I heard something else. Disgust. "Camille," he said, "they didn't just commit fraud. They committed premeditated fraud. That's provable, especially if we can prove you were physically unable to sign or authorize anything during that time." "We can?" I said. "I have medical records." "Then we start there." Within a week, I had every appointment, scan, doctor's note, and discharge summary printed, dated, and notarized. I pulled up old text messages and timestamps. Even the Uber receipt that showed the exact time I was picked up on the highway. All of it mattered. Tarek guided me step by step through filing a formal identity theft report with the FTC and credit bureaus. It was tedious, humiliating at times, but also empowering. Each document I uploaded felt like I was reclaiming something they stole. Not just my credit, my voice. Meanwhile, my parents kept reaching out, but not because they were worried. No, they were checking if I was going to cause a scene. "Delilah's under a lot of pressure right now, sweetheart. The market's unstable. Let's not bring lawyers into this if we don't have to. Let's not ruin family over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? That house, bought in my name, was being used as collateral in Delilah's new PR campaign. They'd flipped it into a business asset. That meant I was legally responsible if the launch went under. They didn't just borrow my name, they bet with it. And I never even got the courtesy of a heads up. While Arden napped, I sat at the kitchen table, highlighting clauses in mortgage contracts and drafting sworn affidavits. At night, when the world got quiet, I listened to my parents' voicemails, not to hear them out, but to record every word. They didn't realize they were building my case for me. One morning, I received a delivery from the county office, official deed records, and there it was, a photocopy of my signature. Only it wasn't mine. Jonas looked over my shoulder, pointed to the M in Camille. "You never loop your M like that," he said. "It's sloppy, almost like Delilah signed it in a hurry," I finished. I looked up at him, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. "We're going to win this." And we did more than prepare to clear my name. We dug deeper. Jonas found Delilah's PR agency site. Buried in a news blurb was a brag about how her billboard campaign was family funded. We traced the timeline, mortgage closed, May 14th, billboard investment, May 22nd. My hospital admission, May 12th. Perfect storm. Tarek nearly whistled when I showed him. This is textbook civil litigation, and if we play this right, he paused. We freeze the asset immediately. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity, consequences, distance. But as I watched Arden sleep that night, her fingers curled around mine like she knew I was scared, I realized something. This wasn't about just getting back at them. It was about showing my daughter what self-respect looks like. They treated me like background noise, like my only value was what could be borrowed or silenced. But I was done playing the quiet one. The lawsuit wasn't filed yet, but the evidence was airtight, the strategy was set, and I had one more thing left to do. I marked a date in my phone, a date I hadn't planned to care about but now felt poetic. Delilah's launch party, the unveiling of her face on a massive digital billboard, a party my parents were throwing for her, full of press, champagne, and family pride. I didn't RSVP, but I marked the time, the address, and set a reminder titled Deliver Truth. Because while they raised me to stay small, smile nice, and disappear quietly, I was about to walk into that room and show them what it looks like when the girl they discarded rewrites the story. They weren't expecting me. The launch party for Delilah's billboard campaign was held at a private hall downtown. Think white marble floors, rented greenery walls, and gold-trimmed everything. The invitation said, cocktail attire, family welcome, cute. It was addressed to Ms. Camille Rowan, like they didn't throw me out of their lives the moment I became inconvenient, like I was just some distant cousin they barely remembered. I didn't RSVP, but I showed up anyway, not to clap, not to toast. I came to deliver truth. I arrived exactly 40 minutes in, just after Delilah's entrance and just before her press photos. She was in a silver sequin gown, sipping champagne from a flute, a soft glow of ring lights bouncing off her cheekbones. Her smile was wide, practiced. She was mid-laugh when she spotted me across the room. For a second, her eyes didn't register me. Then her smile dropped, just a little, enough for me to notice. Mum was the first to react. She gasped like she'd seen a ghost, hand fluttering toward her chest. "Camille," she breathed, stepping forward, arms out like she expected a hug. I didn't move. I reached into my shoulder bag and pulled out 3 envelopes, thick, white, sealed. I handed the first one to her, the second to my father, who looked like he'd just swallowed ice. The third to Delilah. She took hers reluctantly, brows furrowed. "What is this?" she scoffed. "A gift." I looked at her, really looked at her, the glitter, the fake humility, the endless taking, and I said, calm and quiet, "The kind of gift you gave me, on the side of that highway." Her hand clenched around the envelope. She opened it. I watched the colour drain from her face. Inside, a copy of the formal civil lawsuit filed under my name. Evidence of identity theft, mortgage fraud, and financial collusion. A court order for temporary freeze of the property purchased with my stolen identity. A demand for full legal accountability. Dad opened his, slower. Mum's hands were already shaking. The crowd around us started to quiet. The DJ's music dulled. Conversations died. Delilah's PR manager hovered, confused. Her assistant blinked. Someone from across the room whispered, "What's going on?" Then Delilah dropped her champagne. It shattered against the tile. "I can't believe you do this," she hissed. "You stole my name," I said. "You signed my life while I was in a hospital bed. I'm not ruining your party. I'm reclaiming mine." Mum looked like she might faint. "You're destroying this family," she whispered. I stepped forward, just enough for her to hear me over the stunned silence in the room. "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm ending the lie." And then I turned and walked out. I didn't need to stay. I didn't need to see the fallout in real time. I'd already done the hardest part, standing up in the room that taught me to sit down. By the time I got home, the internet was buzzing. Someone had recorded the scene, me handing out the envelopes, the glass shatter, the dead silence. It was already clipped and reposted on TikTok with captions like, "She served her whole family lawsuits at a party?" Thousands of views, thousands of comments, and every single one of them knew I wasn't crazy, I wasn't bitter, I was done being their doormat. Delilah's PR team pulled her campaign within 48 hours. Her agency dropped her with a quiet 2-sentence statement about restructuring their roster. The house, the one they bought with my name, was frozen by court order. No one could move in, no one could sell, no one could profit. And the calls stopped, the texts stopped. For the first time in my life. They had nothing to say, not because they were sorry, but because they were finally afraid. Jonas held me that night and said something simple but true. That wasn't revenge, that was justice. And he was right. But it wasn't just about justice, it was about breaking the cycle of silence, of obedience, of pretending things were fine just to keep the peace. They left me on the side of the road, in labour, because I wasn't the daughter who sparkled. They used my name like a stepping stone, like it didn't belong to a real person. But I wasn't just a name on a contract. I was a woman who remembered everything they'd taught me and finally used it against them. The silence that followed the party wasn't peace, it was vacancy. No calls, no texts, no long-winded voicemails asking me to talk it out. Not even a passive-aggressive meme from my mum's Facebook like she used to send during family spats. They were gone, not literally, but emotionally, publicly, and financially. They vanished. Delilah deleted half her Instagram posts, her comment sections filled with #Justice for Camille, the wellness brand she was about to sign with cut ties within 3 days, and that house, the one they bought in my name, legally frozen, untouchable, dead weight. But not for long. 2 months after the lawsuit was filed, the civil court ruled in my favour. The documents were forged, the signature wasn't mine. The medical evidence made it clear I'd been physically incapacitated at the time of signing, and since the mortgage had closed fraudulently, the bank had every right to reclaim the property, but under one condition: I could claim full ownership or forfeit it entirely. It was poetic. They tried to steal a home for my sister. Instead, they handed me the keys. Jonas and I drove out there a week later. The house was fine. New construction, 2 stories, cream siding and black shutters, empty inside. But I didn't want it, not to live in, not to rent, not to flip. I stood in the hallway and felt nothing but cold. This house wasn't built on love, it was built on betrayal, and I didn't want to carry that into the next chapter of my life, but someone else could use it, someone like me. The idea came during a 2 a.m. feeding. Arden had just drifted off, her tiny fist still clutching my shirt. I looked at her and thought, what if every woman left behind by her family had somewhere to go, somewhere safe, quiet, dignified? That's how Arden's Light was born. A small non-profit, funded in part by the sale of the house they stole from me, dedicated to helping mothers abandoned by their families, kicked out during pregnancy, or left to raise children alone. And that house? It became our first shelter. The opening day was cloudy and cold. I stood on the porch in a wool coat, Arden strapped to my chest in a sling. Volunteers hung string lights inside. A donated crib sat in one of the bedrooms. Then she arrived, our first resident, young, maybe 19. Clutching a diaper bag and wearing her boyfriend's oversized hoodie, she looked terrified, hopeful, like she didn't trust she was allowed to be safe. I opened the door. She stepped inside, her eyes wide. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. And I smiled. "I do," I said. "That's why this is here." Word spread fast. Within 6 months, we had a second house, then a third, each one named after someone who chose to fight alone and then realized she didn't have to. We offered more than beds. We gave legal help, parenting classes, trauma counseling. I didn't talk about my family publicly. I didn't need to. But they watched. Oh, they watched. One afternoon, I walked out of the centre to load diapers into my trunk and saw a car across the street, silver, familiar. Inside sat my parents. They didn't get out. They just sat there, windows rolled up, hands folded in their laps, looking, like they were hoping to see a glimpse of the daughter they lost. And in a way they did. But this version of me wasn't the one they left on a highway. This woman had a spine, a purpose, a mission. I didn't wave, I didn't nod, I just turned, loaded the car, and walked back inside with my daughter in my arms. Later that night, I found a letter slid under our front door. No envelope, just one piece of paper, my mum's handwriting. "We didn't realize how badly we'd hurt you. We thought it was a formality. Delilah needed help. You weren't using your credit. We never meant to..." There it was. Not regret, just damage control. No mention of the highway, no mention of the labour, no mention of Arden. Only what they lost, the house, the reputation, their standing in the family. "We're being shunned by everyone. No one invites us anymore. Delilah can't get booked. Please, can we meet?" I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness, not even out of anger, out of clarity. Because sometimes when people show you who they are, you stop asking for them to change. Now, Arden is walking. She's wild and curious and always reaching for the light. And every time I see her touch another child's hand at the shelter or watch her fall asleep on my chest after story time, I think, this is the life I wanted. Not glitter, not public approval, just peace, truth, and rooms filled with women who now know they were never broken, just discarded. And maybe that's what I needed all along, not for them to say sorry, but to see me standing where they never thought I would be. If you've ever been left behind by your own family or told your pain was too much to deal with, I see you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have forgiven them or kept walking like I did? Your story matters too, and I'm listening.